Ben walked alongside the wagon as Ernest towed it along the dirt road. Red walked beside him, holding his hand, keeping close to his side. His eyes wandered across the surroundings, searching for any signs of danger along the pale forest road, and occasionally at the other survivors he travelled with. He glanced at the back of the cart, where Marge and Avery walked. The mama bear and the mother goat conversed with each other as they both kept watch over Avery's 5 kids riding in the back. They were engaged in their own little world and blissfully distracted from any possible danger. Ben knew that for safety, that wasn't ideal. However, given what those two and the kids had been through lately, they deserved the opportunity to unwind. The dwarf, Blick, walked on the other side of the wagon from Ben, so he couldn't see him, nor Sir Umpty, a member of the old Royal Guard, who also walked along that side, guiding them to an old fortress where they would be safe. Ernest, the tall man with the crooked body, pulled the cart. He was known by people as the Crooked Man because of his horribly misshapen body, and his towering size scared others away. None of that mattered, since scarier things were everywhere now. Ernest wasn't a bad person either. He was strong, kind, and carried a heart of gold. He had shown hospitality to everyone in this group. However, lately, he'd started gradually pulling back from Umpty. He had expressed to Ben before they started on this trip that he'd been growing suspicious of the Royal Guardsmen. Ben's suspicions started to grow as well. Whenever he looked at the guardsmen, some primal part of Ben's lupine ancestry would instinctually make him toy with his ear, something he only did when danger was around the corner. "Stop!" Umpty called out. The kids in the cart yelped as it jolted to a halt, and the smaller ones fell over on their backs. Ben walked in front of everyone to see where they were. A fork in the road split the path 3 ways. A signpost stood between 2 of the paths and pointed in the general directions of each way to go. He didn't recognize the names painted on the sign. So now what? He turned around and directed his question to Umpty, who also stepped forward. "We take the leftmost path." Umpty spoke in his deep tone. "The fort is just a few more miles along it, then down a smaller path branching off." "Why'd we stop then? We could have kept going with your lead." Umpty raised his sword to point down his chosen route. "Because of them." Ben followed the point of Umpty's saber to see 3 ghouls hobbling aimlessly on the road ahead. He readied his spear to attack and nodded back to Ernest. The Crooked Man took notice, retrieved his crossbow from the chest in the front of the cart, and raised it to fire upon the blank-eyed obstructions. A sharp twang sounded as the bolt flew from the weapon, darted around erratically, then hit a ghoul in the side of its head. Ben understood that the flight path was because of the curse that made Ernest, and everything he crafted, crooked and misshapen. Even so, it baffled him that the man could still hit his mark with such a crazy projectile. The first ghoul fell, and the other 2 howled into the air before turning to charge at the survivors, mouths wildly agape. Ben lowered his spear, ready to take the attackers. Umpty at his side with his sword in hand peered dead forward. And Red was clutching Ben's tail in fear. "Red, what are you doing? Let go!" he shouted at her. "I can't fight with you clinging to me." He looked back up at the ghouls still stumbling toward them. Umpty had rushed ahead to meet them head-on. A swing of his sword liberated one's head from its shoulders. The other tried to take him from the side. Ben threw his spear and hit the last ghoul in the leg, causing it to stumble and fall over. It bumped hard into Umpty's right side with a sharp cracking noise, and he jumped sideways, clutching his arm with a pained yelp. He spun around, and as the ghoul got back up, he lashed its chest with his sword. The ghoul reeled backward, falling over again. Ben struggled to shake himself free of Red's grasp as Blick ran ahead, letting out a battle cry. "Red, let go! I have to—" He looked up to see that Blick had already finished off the last ghoul. Marge ran around the wagon to Ben's side. "What's going on?" She looked down at Red, still clinging to the wolf's tail, her eyes wide. "Red grabbed me and wouldn't let me deal with the ghouls on the road." He looked at the little girl with a tight brow. "Red, you can't do that! How am I supposed to fight those things with you holding on to me like that?" Her head sank as she let go of Ben's tail. Sorry for his outburst, he knelt down and lifted her hood. He never wanted to be the cause of her fear. His ears drooped as he saw the tears welling in her chestnut eyes. It seems to me she was scared for you, Wolf. Marge spoke with a stern tone. She didn't want you going too far away, like any frightened child would. Ben didn't say anything. He thought himself a fool for not realizing this himself. He leaned forward and wrapped Red in his arms. She didn't want him rushing after the ghouls because she was afraid she'd lose him too. He understood. She'd lost more than most of them, but the only way he could protect her was to fight. He pulled Red closer into the circle of his arms. I'm sorry, but I'll do whatever it takes to keep you and our friends safe. I'll be careful, though. Marge stepped forward and put a large hand on his back. We all have to make tough choices, but she'll learn that you make the right ones for her.